Do me a favor. I want you to close your eyes for a second. Even if you're driving. Just, well, keep one eye on the road, obviously, but engage your imagination for a minute. I want you to picture the room you're in right now, the walls, the floor, the chair you're sitting on. It feels solid, right?
Yeah, it feels stable. I mean, it's the very definition of stability. It's home.
Okay, right. But now I want you to zoom out. That chair is bolted to a floor, and the floor is anchored to a crust. And that crust is really just the thin, fragile skin of a rock that we call Earth. And this is where it gets kind of uncomfortable.
It does.
Because that rock is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour. It's orbiting a thermonuclear explosion, the sun, at 67,000 miles an hour.
And the whole solar system, the whole neighborhood is drifting through the Milky Way at something like 500,000 miles an hour.
Exactly. 500,000 miles an hour.
Mm.
We are effectively clinging to a tiny piece of dust, hurtling through a vacuum that is absolute zero. It's completely silent, and it is mind-bogglingly empty.
It's a hostile environment.
Hostile is an understatement. It's a void that, by all biological rights, should kill us instantly. It wants to freeze us, suffocate us, irradiate us.
It is definitely not a nursery. It's a dark, cold expanse.
Yo, it's not. And yet here we are. We're breathing, we're drinking our coffee, we're worrying about our emails, we're listening to this deep dive, and we're looking out at a universe that, despite all that chaos, despite the violence of supernovas and black holes, it seems suspiciously perfect.
Suspiciously perfect. You sound like a detective arriving at a crime scene.
Well, I kind of feel like one today. Because when you actually look at the numbers, the physics that allow you and me to just sit here and have this conversation, it feels like a setup. It feels like the game was rigged from the start.
And that feeling, that intuition, is exactly the signal we are trying to decode in today's deep dive. We're looking at the ultimate cold case. Is reality just a cosmic accident? Are we just the lucky winners in this infinite casino of universes? Or is there a signal in the noise? A message in the heart of the cosmos?
Right, so we are tackling the teleological argument today, the argument from design. But we're doing it with a very specific roadmap because we are diving deep into J.R. Ahmed's text, Cosmos and Creator.
Which is a brilliant synthesis of these ideas.
It really is. And folks, this isn't just your standard Philosophy 101 recap. We're going to start with the classics, sure, William Paley and his watch, but then we are going to drag that argument through the mud.
We certainly are. We are going to subject the whole idea of design to the absolute acid bath of modern skepticism. We've got David Hume, we have Charles Darwin, we have the concept of the multiverse.
If it survives all that.
If it survives, we arrive at a really fascinating destination. The Quranic concept of Ayat, or signs. The idea that the universe isn't just a machine you find lying on the ground, but a speech that you are supposed to listen to.
I love that. So consider me the empiricist today.
Yeah.
I'm bringing the skepticism, I've got the cold hard facts, I've got the random chance cards, and I am not letting you off the hook with easy answers. I want to know the how.
And I will represent the rationalist perspective found in the source text, the view of Sunnat Allah, which is divine law, and sovereign intelligence.
Yeah.
I'll be focusing on the why.
All right, so let's unpack this. We have to start with the absolute classic, the one pretty much everyone learns in their first philosophy class, William Paley.
Right, so it is the year 1802. William Paley publishes Natural Theology, and he gives us this very sticky, very famous thought experiment.
Watch on the Heath.
Exactly. He says, imagine you are walking across a heath, like a wild grassy field, and you pitch your foot against a stone. You look down at it, it's rough, it's irregular. You would probably just assume the stone has been there forever. Nature could have just thrown it there.
Right, you wouldn't ask any questions. It's just a rock, wind and rain, whatever.
But then, suppose you find a watch on the ground. You pick it up, you open the back, and you see gears, springs, sprockets, all of it working together with a very specific purpose, which is to tell time. Paley argues that you would never, not in a million years, assume that the wind just blew some metal shards together and accidentally created that watch.
Because it implies contrivance. It implies intent. The complexity implies a mind, right? The gears are there for a reason.
Precisely. And so Paley pivots and says, well, look at the human eye. Look at the rotation of the planets. The universe is infinitely more complex than a pocket watch. Therefore, if a watch requires a watchmaker, the universe requires a universe maker.
It's a compelling argument. I mean, it's highly intuitive. You see a painting, you assume a painter. You see a building, you assume an architect.
It makes logical sense to our brains.
It does. But the source material highlights that this argument has gotten a massive upgrade in the modern era. We aren't just looking at brass gears anymore. We are looking at the dashboard of the universe itself.
The fine-tuning argument. This is where physics really starts to sound a little bit like theology.
It really does. So let's look at the data provided in the source.
Where-
We're talking about cosmic constants. These are basically the factory settings of the universe.
I like to think of it like a giant sound mixing board, like in a high-end recording studio.
Oh yeah, thousands of dials and sliders.
Exactly. Each dial on that board represents a fundamental law of physics. The strength of gravity, the mass of a proton, the electromagnetic force, the expansion rate of the Big Bang.
Okay, I'm picturing the board. It's huge.
Now imagine that for life to exist, and I don't just mean humans, I mean anything more complex than a basic hydrogen atom, every single one of those dials has to be set to a very specific number. And I don't mean just set it to about a 5 or a 6.
Right.
I mean set to a number with 50 decimal places.
Give me a concrete example from the text, because precise is a vague word, and I want to make that concrete for the listener.
Sure. Let's take the expansion rate of the universe right after the Big Bang. The universe explodes into existence. If that initial rate of expansion had been faster by just 1 part in a million,
Just a tiny microscopic bit faster.
stars and galaxies never form. Matter spreads out way too quickly. It just scatters into the dark, cold void. You get no clumps, no fusion, no carbon, no us. Just a thin, freezing soup of hydrogen gas forever.
Okay, so that's a completely dead universe.
Yeah.
What if we turn the dial the other way? What if it's slower by 1 part in a million?
Then gravity wins too early. The whole universe collapses back in on itself into a fireball, a big crunch. And that happens long before life even has a chance to start. It expands, stops, and snaps right back. Game over.
So we're essentially walking a tightrope.
Oh, it is much thinner than a tightrope. The source mentions the cosmological constant. This is the energy density of space itself. Basically dark energy.
Okay?
The precision required here is 1 part in 10 to the power of 120.
I can't even visualize that number. 10 to the 112.
Nobody can visualize it. It's a 1 with 120 zeros after it. The text uses an analogy to help us grasp it, though. Imagine firing a bullet from one side of the observable universe.
Which is, what, billions of light years across?
Billions. And managing to hit a specific 1-inch coin on the exact opposite side of the universe. That is the level of precision we are talking about with the cosmological constant. If you miss that coin by a single millimeter, the universe is dead.
Wow. Okay, that really puts the word lucky into a totally different perspective. Like if I flip a coin and get heads, that's luck. If I flip it 10 times and get heads, that's weird. But if I hit a coin across the entire universe, that's a sniper.
Exactly, a sniper. And that is why the source material says this precision defies randomness's gloom. When you see that level of calibration, the rational mind really struggles to accept, oops, it just happened. It looks exactly like a setup. It looks like the fix is in.
Okay, hold on. I'm getting swept up in the awe here. And as the empiricist today, that's dangerous. Because while Paley's watch is a nice story and the fine-tuning sniper is spooky, I have to put on my skeptic hat.
Please do.
There are some heavy hitters in philosophy and science who have taken a sledgehammer to this exact logic. And to its credit, Cosmos and Creator is very fair about laying out these critiques.
You are referring to the work of David Hume.
The great dissolver himself,
Yeah.
Yes. David Hume, speaking through his character Philo in his dialogues concerning natural religion, basically said, hold on a second. You are making a massive, unjustifiable, logical leap here.
How so? What's the leap?
The flaw is in the analogy itself. We know watches are designed because we've seen watchmakers making watches. We have a frame of reference. I could literally take you to a factory in Switzerland and show you the guy putting the tiny gears in with tweezers.
That's true. We have empirical, historical evidence of the process of watchmaking.
Right, but we have never seen a universe being made. We have a sample size of exactly 1.
That is a very fair epistemological point.
Hume argues that the universe is unique. You can't compare a singular cosmic event to a man-made toy. It's apples and oranges. Actually, it's more like apples and, well, universes. He says the universe looks less like a machine that was built from the outside and more like a vegetable that grows from the inside.
An organic entity?
Right. If you walk into a garden and see a cabbage, you don't assume a cabbage maker sat there and glued the leaves on one by one.
Right. Yeah, you assume it grew.
It grew from a seed. It has an internal principle of order. Hume is saying that applying human logic, like design or engineering, to the cosmos is just a wild guess. It's anthropomorphism. We are projecting our human way of making things onto the universe.
It's a potent critique. It attacks the very foundation of how we know what we know. But the source material points out that the acid bath for the design argument got even stronger, much stronger, with Charles Darwin.
Oh, absolutely. If Hume was the warning shot, Darwin was the nuke. Because Paley's whole argument rested heavily on biological complexity.
Yeah.
He'd say, look at the eye. It has a lens, a retina, an optic nerve. It absolutely must be designed by an intelligence.
And Darwin provided a mechanism that could produce that exact complexity without a designer.
The blind watchmaker, natural selection.
The source describes it quite vividly. You have random mutation, which is pure chaos, and then you have a filter, which is death.
Yeah, nature is brutal.
The environment simply kills off what doesn't work and keeps what does. Over millions and millions of years, you get the eye, you get the wing, you get the human brain.
And the key here, from the skeptic's point of view, is that the process is completely mindless. It doesn't care. It doesn't plan for the future. It just happens. It's a meat grinder. You throw biology in, turn the crank of deep time, and out comes complexity.
So the argument becomes, if complexity can arise from a mindless process, do we really need a God to explain it?
Richard Dawkins would say absolutely not. He calls it the ultimate 747 argument.
Explain that one for our listeners.
Well, the argument is pretty simple. If you say a complex universe needs an even more complex God to build it, then who designed God?
Ah, the infinite regress.
Exactly. Who designed the designer? If God is complex enough to engineer a universe, he needs an explanation too. Otherwise, you're just kicking the can down the road. You haven't actually solved the mystery of complexity. You've just slapped the label God on it and called it a day.
We will definitely address that regress later because the Quranic perspective has a very specific, logical answer to the question of who designed the designer. But before we get there, you have one more card to play, don't you? The ultimate skeptic's answer to the fine-tuning sniper.
I do. It's my favorite one, actually. And it directly addresses that sniper analogy we used earlier. It's called the puddle.
Douglas Adams, right?
Yes, the brilliant Douglas Adams. The source brings up the anthropic principle, which is often illustrated by this puddle analogy. So, I want you to imagine a puddle waking up one morning in a hole in the ground. The sun is rising, the birds are singing, and the puddle looks around at its home.
And what does the puddle see?
It sees a hole that fits it absolutely perfectly. And the puddle thinks, wow, this hole fits me perfectly. Look at that curve on the left. It matches my side exactly. Look at the depth. It's just right for my volume. This hole must have been designed specifically for me to live in.
But of course, the hole wasn't made for the puddle at all.
No. The puddle is fluid. It just changed shape to fit the hole. We look at the universe and say, wow, gravity's perfect for us. But that's backward. We evolved to fit the gravity that already existed. If gravity were different, we would just be different, or we wouldn't be here to complain about it.
This is essentially the survivorship bias argument. You are saying we are just the winners of a lottery, and because we won, we falsely think the game was rigged in our favor from the start.
Precisely. And this leads to the biggest headache for the design argument, the multiverse.
The infinite casino.
Yeah, the infinite casino.
Hmm.
Because if you have infinite universes just bubbling up like foam in a soda, and each one has different random laws of physics.
And purely by chance.
Purely by chance. One of them is going to have the exact right settings for life.
Yeah.
Most of them are totally dead. Some of them collapse instantly. Some of them are just empty space full of radiation. But statistically, if you roll the dice an infinite number of times, one has to work. We are just living in the lucky one. No God required. Just an infinite amount of dice rolls.
It is a dazzling counter-argument, I'll give you that. It takes the sheer improbability of the fine-tuning and just dilutes it with infinite possibilities until it's not improbable anymore.
So, that is where we stand at the end of Act 2. The Watchmaker is looking pretty battered right now. Hume says the analogy is weak. Darwin says nature builds itself blindly. The puddle says we are arrogant and delusional. And the multiverse says it's just raw statistics.
It feels like a closed case.
It does. If I'm looking at this purely through the lens of modern secular philosophy, I'd say Paley is out for the count. The empiricist wins.
But here is where it gets incredibly fascinating. Because the source material, Cosmos and Creator, it doesn't shy away from any of this. It doesn't pretend David Hume didn't exist or that Darwin was entirely wrong. Instead, it pivots.
Okay.
It suggests that while the puddle analogy is very clever, it misses the actual scale of the precision involved. And while the multiverse is mathematically possible, it might actually prove the exact opposite of what atheists think it proves.
Wait, really? Okay, so how does the rationalist of the Quranic perspective fight back against the multiverse and the puddle?
By shifting the entire conceptual framework. We need to move away from Western proofs and start talking about Quranic signs.
What's the difference? That just sounds like semantics to me.
I promise you it isn't semantics, it's epistemology. It is fundamentally about how we know truth. Think about a proof, like a mathematical equation. 2 + 2 = 4.
Right.
A proof forces you to accept it. You have no choice. It compels the intellect. If I prove a theorem to you, you must believe it, or you're just being irrational.
Sure, math doesn't care about my feelings.
Exactly. But a sign, an ayah in Arabic, is different. It requires engagement. It requires a receiver who is actually willing to look and reflect.
Explain that a bit more.
The source explains that the Quran doesn't try to prove God exists as if he were some abstract theory to be tested in a laboratory. It presents the universe as a living scripture. The Arabic word used for the verses in the Quran is ayat, but that exact same word, ayat, is used for the phenomena of nature.
Wait, so a literal verse in the book and a physical star in the sky are called the exact same thing?
Yes. They are both ayat. They are both modes of divine communication. The argument here is that the universe isn't a static object we found lying on the ground like Paley's watch. It is a dynamic, ongoing performance.
Give me an example from the text. How does this shift actually change the view?
Let's look at the example of the ships sailing the sea.
Okay.
Ships. The Quran repeatedly cites a ship sailing on the ocean as a miraculous sign. Now you, the empiricist, you look at a massive cargo ship floating on the water. What do you see?
I see physics. I see buoyancy, Archimedes' principle. The water is displaced by the hull, which creates an upward force that is equal to the weight of the water displaced. It's just mechanics.
Yes, of course. You see the mechanism, and the mechanism is real. But the Quranic perspective asks the deeper question. Who wrote the code for buoyancy in the first place? Who established the specific density of water such that it can support heavy loads, yet is fluid enough to yield to the bow of the ship? Who commanded the wind? The source argues that these aren't just blind mechanisms, they are deliberate indications of mercy.
Mercy. I don't know, that feels like a very emotional word for fluid dynamics.
Is it? Think about the water cycle. The text specifically mentions the water falling from the sky. Evaporation, condensation, precipitation. A skeptic looks up and sees a weather pattern. The believer looks up and sees a highly sophisticated distribution system for life. It's a global delivery service for fresh water.
So you're saying the sign isn't just the fact that the physics work, but that they work specifically for us, for life.
Exactly. It points to a sustainer. And this brings up a massive, crucial distinction in the source text, the difference between a watchmaker and a sustainer.
This is a huge point. Because in Western deism, and arguably in Paley's worldview too, God is just a watchmaker who built the watch, wound the spring super tight, and then just left the room.
Right. He set the laws of physics, pressed play on the Big Bang, and walked away to let it run. The watch runs on its own internal logic now.
Which makes God kind of, well, unemployed.
Exactly. And that makes it incredibly easy for science to step in and say, well, we can explain the gears now, we know how gravity and evolution work, so we simply don't need the watchmaker anymore. That is the classic God of the gaps problem.
Right. As the circle of scientific knowledge grows, the dark gaps where God supposedly lives shrink until he disappears completely.
But the Quranic view is fundamentally different.
How so?
The source emphasizes God as Al-Qayyum, the sustainer. The text references the verse, he holds the heavens and the earth lest they cease. The universe isn't a toy running on batteries. It is being actively held in existence at every single microsecond.
So the laws of physics aren't independent forces?
No. The laws of physics are the habits of God. They are Sunnat Allah. The regularity you see. The fact that gravity works today exactly the same way it did yesterday, that isn't proof that the machine is autonomous. It is proof that the sustainer is faithful and consistent.
Wow, that's a heavy concept. It's not that the watch is winding itself. It's that the ticking is actually a constant active stream of divine commands.
Precisely. Imagine watching a movie on a screen in a theater. It looks like a continuous, self-sustaining moving image. But if you turn around and stop the projector, the image vanishes instantly. It doesn't stay up there on the screen on its own. The Quranic view is that the universe is the image on the screen, and God's will is the light from the projector. If he looks away, the universe isn't just dark, it's gone.
This creates a kind of unified reality then. Science studies the how, the mechanism, the film, real itself. Faith discerns the why, the light, the projector, the intent behind the film.
They are binocular vision. They aren't rivals at all.
Okay, I can see the philosophical elegance of that.
Yeah.
It really is beautiful. But I have to bring us back down to earth, or rather, back down to the mud. because we still have to address the elephant in the room. Or the monkey in the room, actually, evolution.
Yeah.
You can talk about sustainers and habits of God and projectors all you want, but Darwin showed us that the actual process of creating biological life is messy.
Yeah.
It's violent. It's full of dead ends. It's not a graceful projection of light. It's blood and teeth and starvation.
Mm.
How on earth does the source reconcile divine wisdom with survival of the fittest?
This is where we get into the concept of theistic evolution.
Which is what, exactly?
The idea that evolution is the method, not the creator. The source material is very clear on this. Islam requires belief in God as the creator of all things, but it does not necessarily require creationism in the very strict literalist sense of a magical, distinct popping into existence of every single species instantly out of thin air.
But the randomness, that is my sticking point here. Darwin says genetic mutations are random. If they're random, they aren't guided. If they aren't guided, there's no designer. It's a contradiction. You can't have it both ways.
The text actually challenges our very definition of the word random.
How so?
Think about it. To a human observer, a genetic mutation looks random because we can't predict it. It just looks like static or noise in the data. But does unpredictable to humans actually mean unguided by God?
I mean, I guess not necessarily.
The source brings up the concept of takdir, which means precise decree or measure. Imagine a really complex computer simulation, like a procedural generation game where it builds a new universe every time you play. It uses a random number generator to create the world. To the player walking around in the game, the mountains and rivers look completely randomly placed. But the boundaries of that randomness, the underlying potential for what can and cannot be generated, was meticulously coded by the programmer.
So you're saying natural selection is a tool?
It's a secondary cause. The source argues that natural selection is a filter, yes. But who designed the filter? Who engineered the DNA molecule's capacity to mutate and adapt in the first place? Who designed the ecological environment that actually does the selecting?
The text mentions the Arabic phrase kun fayakun, be and it is.
Yes, and this is a really beautiful linguistic and theological point. Be and it is doesn't necessarily mean a cartoonish poof of smoke and a giraffe appears. It implies the absolute initiation of a reality. If God commands the universe to evolve life, that single command, be, contains the entire evolutionary trajectory of billions of years folded within it.
Oh, like a compressed ZIP file that slowly unzips over deep time.
Exactly. The becoming is the automated realization of the be. So when we observe evolution in the fossil record, we aren't seeing a blind, godless process replacing the creator. We are seeing the slow, majestic unfolding of the divine command through the medium of time.
That actually connects back to something regarding the code we talked about. The source mentions that we don't actually need to see the carpenter to believe in the table. We just need to see the code in the wood.
Right. This is the direct rebuttal to Hume. Hume said we haven't seen a universe being made, so we can't infer a maker. The Quranic argument says, we don't need to see the Genesis event. We see the Sunnat Allah today. We see the way of God. The sheer consistency of natural law is the footprint of the Creator.
Okay, I am with you on the consistency. Gravity is reliable. But what about the inconsistency? What about the actual flaws in the design?
The problem of evil, the design flaws argument.
Yeah. Hume was absolutely brutal on this front. And frankly, for a lot of people, it's the hardest argument to shake. He said, look, if you walked into a house and the roof leaked every time it rained, the windows were cracked, and the basement was constantly flooded, you wouldn't look around and call the architect a genius. You'd call him totally incompetent.
Or malicious.
Right. And we look at the human body. We look at nature. We have hurricanes that wipe out cities. We have cancer cells that mutate. We have wisdom teeth that don't fit in our jaws. We have blind spots in our eyes. If God is perfect, why is his work so glitchy? If the universe is a sign of mercy, like you said earlier, why does the sign sometimes fall on us and crush us?
It's the most profound question in theology. And the source material offers two very distinct Quranic rebuttals to this. The first is metaphysical, the limitation of matter.
What does that mean in plain English?
Think of a master glassblower, the absolute best in the world. He has the perfect breath control, the perfect artistic vision, the perfect skill. But if the raw glass itself is inherently impure or brittle, the final vase might have tiny bubbles or cracks in it.
So the flaw isn't in the blower's skill, it's in the glass itself.
In a metaphysical sense, yes. The argument is that the receptivity of the substance is limited. Matter, by its very nature, is finite. God is infinite. When the infinite creates something finite, there is inherently a gap. The flaws are a necessary, unavoidable result of creating a physical world that is not God. Because if the world were totally perfect and infinite, it wouldn't be the world. It would be God.
That's incredibly deep. It's like, by definition, a created physical thing must have limitations and decay.
Exactly. But the second argument is much more practical and grounded. It is the teleological purpose of suffering.
The Jim argument.
In a way, yes. The source asks a fundamental question about intent. What is the actual purpose of this earthly life? Is it supposed to be a hedonistic paradise? A luxury vacation resort where nothing goes wrong?
Well, if it is, the management is doing a terrible job. 1 star on Yelp.
Right. But the Quranic worldview asserts that this life was never meant to be a paradise. It is explicitly a test. It is a crucible for spiritual and moral growth. The Quran explicitly says, "We have created man in toil."
So the hurricane isn't a glitch in the code. It's actually a feature of the level design.
Precisely. Suffering fosters gratitude. It distinguishes the patient person from the impatient person. It builds resilience and empathy and character. The perfect world, the one without leaky roofs or cancer or tsunamis, is the next one. This world is specifically designed to be broken in very specific ways to test the human spirit.
So Hume looks at the leaky roof and says, bad architect. The theist looks at the leaky roof and says, wait, this isn't supposed to be a luxury house. It's an obstacle course. The leak is part of the training.
Yes. The text calls this architectural justice. The design sets the purpose perfectly. If the intended purpose is moral testing and soul building, then the flaws are actually highly functional tools.
Okay, we have covered a massive amount of ground. We've fought off the blind watchmaker. We've reframed evolutionary randomness, and we've actually found a logical reason for the flaws in nature. But I still have my ace card.
You're not giving up yet.
Never. The infinite casino. The multiverse.
Let's hear it.
I know we touched on it earlier, but I really want to drill down into it. Because even if everything you just said is true, even if suffering is a gym for the soul and evolution is just God's tool, the multiverse theory suggests that with enough universes, all of this, the Quran, the Bible, Earth, you and me talking right now, is just a statistical inevitability.
It removes the specialness.
Right. It's not special. It's just inevitable math. In an infinite sequence, everything happens eventually.
And here is perhaps the most surprising and brilliant pivot in the entire source material. The rationalist perspective doesn't actually have to reject the multiverse theory at all.
Wait, really? Because I thought the multiverse was basically the atheist's ultimate God killer.
In fact, the text argues that if a multiverse exists, if there are billions of other universes bubbling out there, it just proves God is even greater.
How does that work? That totally flips the board.
Think deeply about the core theological definition of God: maximal perfection, infinite creativity, infinite power and majesty.
Okay, I'm with you.
If you were a master artist and you had infinite paint, infinite brushes, and an infinite canvas, would you paint exactly one picture and then just put your brushes down and stop forever?
Probably not. You'd keep painting.
The source argues that an infinite God would naturally, logically create infinite possibilities. Why would the everlasting creator limit his majestic creativity to just one single cosmic bubble?
So the multiverse isn't an alternative to God.
It is a direct manifestation of his attribute of being the creator.
That flips the script completely. The secular empiricist looks at it and says, there are so many universes, one of them had to be right by pure accident. The theist looks at the exact same data and says, there are so many universes because God is just that infinitely productive and glorious.
Exactly. And it also brilliantly solves the who designed the designer problem you brought up earlier with Dawkins' ultimate 747 argument.
How does it solve the regress?
The atheist uses the multiverse to say, we don't need a first cause, we don't need a creator because we just have infinite bubbles popping into existence forever. But logically, you still have to ask the fundamental question. What is the underlying mechanism generating all those bubbles? What is the physics of the bubble maker itself?
Right, the generator has to exist. The casino has to be built before you can roll the infinite dice.
Exactly. You haven't actually removed the need for a source. You've just made the output of the source more complex. The Quranic argument lands firmly on God as the necessary being, the ground of all possibility. Whether he creates one solitary universe or a trillion multiverse bubbles, he is the ultimate foundation that allows existence to happen at all instead of just nothingness.
Wow. So we arrive at the synthesis. We started this whole journey with a ticking watch on a heath and a freezing, deadly void in space. We went through the absolute meat grinder of skepticism, Hume, Darwin, the puddle, and we end up where? How do we summarize this?
We end up with a beautifully unified reality.
I really like that phrase, unified reality.
It's the only way it works. We reject the God of the gaps completely. We don't need to hide God in the dark corners of what human science just hasn't figured out yet.
Because that's a losing game.
Yeah,
Science always advances, the gaps always shrink, and your God gets smaller.
exactly. Instead, we see God in the light. We see him in the system itself. Science explores the how, the mechanics, the biology, the gravity, the quantum fields. Faith discerns the why, the intent, the active sustainment, the ultimate meaning of the system.
It's the binocular vision you mentioned. One eye is looking at the mechanism, seeing the gears of the watch. The other eye is looking at the meaning, seeing the time. You need both eyes open to safely cross the street of reality.
And the signal we talked about at the very beginning, that too-perfect nature of the cosmos.
It's not a trap. It's not a cold statistical anomaly.
No, it is an invitation. The Source beautifully calls the universe a living, breathing scripture inscribed with God's great name. Every single atom, every planetary orbit, every dividing cell is an ayah. It's a sign pointing continuously back to the Source.
It really changes how you look up at the stars at night. It's not just blind nuclear fusion happening millions of miles away in the dark. It's speech.
It is communication.
So, as we finally wrap up this deep dive into the source material, into the signal in the heart of the cosmos, we are basically left with a choice. We've looked at the watch, we've looked at the puddle, and we've looked at the multiverse. We've heard the best arguments for blind chance and the arguments for profound design.
We have seen that science and theology, when they are properly and deeply understood, are not enemies at all. They are two different languages describing the exact same masterpiece.
And that leads us to our final thought for you, the listener.
If the universe is indeed a vast set of signs, and you are the conscious observer standing in the middle of it, that doesn't just make you a passive spectator.
No, it makes you the intended recipient.
A message has been deliberately sent. It's written in the pull of gravity, in the spiraling code of DNA, and in the very silence of the cosmic void.
The ultimate question isn't just, is there a signal out there?
The question is, are you going to answer it?
Thanks for listening to this deep dive.
Keep looking up.